It's my conviction that every single man has a duty to forge himself into a reader. And in this episode of the podcast, I want to do my best to convince you to agree with me. Welcome back to the Read Like a Man podcast. My name is Paige. If you're new here, happy to have you along. Today, I want to talk about 5 reasons why every man must forge himself into a reader. It's a duty that we have as men, and it's not something that can be shirked or avoided. Okay. The first reason that I want to talk about is that reading is the best scientifically proven method that we know of to develop critical analysis, reflection, and empathy, those 3 skills. And that's something that Maryanne in this book, Read or Come Home, this is something that she talks about a lot, is how science has shown us what reading does for the brain and how our brain develops as we learn to read and as we delve into reading and as we move from the first to the second to the third levels of reading. It brings this ability to analyze things critically, to reflect on the information that we've gathered, and to empathize with other people's perspectives that nothing else really brings. There is a small ability to develop it through other means, right? You're not completely screwed if you don't read, but you're mostly screwed if you don't read. It was really the message that I got out of this book. And I loved one of the quotes that she had at the end of it. She was quoting a guy named Steve Wasserman. And he said, "Readers know in their bones something we forget at our peril, that without books, indeed without literacy, the good society vanishes and barbarism triumphs." And it's so true. And the more you look at the state of the world nowadays, and the more you see people whose actions just don't make any sense, right? There's so many things out there with people that I see them doing things, and you're just like, it doesn't make any sense. You have no common sense. You didn't think about this at all, or else you would have done something completely different than what you're doing, right? And as soon as I read this book, what was such a realization to me was this idea of like, oh my gosh, 99 times out of 100, when I look at a situation like that, what I find is that is a person who doesn't read. This person who is completely lacking in common sense, which is just another term for the ability to do critical analysis, right? Is someone who doesn't read. Or if they do read, they only ever read at the first level of reading, which is just for pleasure, right? They never even advance to the second level, which is just to gain knowledge and actual understanding of something. And they certainly never move to the third level, which is the integration of all of these things to bring about an understanding of the world that was broader than what you went into the book with in the first place, right? So it's not a matter of fiction versus nonfiction, or, stories versus, like factual books, right? That's not the point. The point is reading something just for fun and something that only provides fun and entertainment versus reading something that can provide knowledge, versus trying your best to choose books wisely and then mine all of the wealth of information and the store of knowledge inside of them out and apply it to your life in a way that actually makes changes to your life. So again, that first reason, reading is the best thing that we know of, and it's the only scientifically proven thing at this point that develops those skills of critical analysis, reflection, and empathy. So that's the first reason. We have to develop those skills if we're going to live a good life. If you can't analyze things critically, you're screwed. If you can't reflect on things, you'll never get any better, because you won't be able to look at what's happened in the past in your life and in someone else's life and extrapolate that out to what you want in the future to change what your actions are, right? If you can't reflect, you're screwed. And if you have no empathy, you will get ostracized from society. And that's the big fear that we have. We have a fear of dying, and we have a fear of being ostracized from society, right? Because in previous history, we would have died because of that. And now it's basically feels like the same thing, right? So you have to develop this ability to empathize and to understand other people's points of view. And one of the best ways that you do that is through reading, because in reading, you can enter the mind of another person, especially in stories and in great stories. You enter the mind of another person and you understand what they're thinking and what drove them to this decision and drove them to this choice that they made. And then when you encounter that in real life, you have more understanding, you have more grace, you have more sympathy, you have more of all these things. You have more empathy, you have more understanding of someone else's position, and that makes you a better human in the real world when you're dealing with people in real life. So the second thing that I want to talk about is that you learn from other people's experiences and not just your own. The hard thing about if you don't read is you're only reliant on your own experience to learn the lessons that are required in life, right? And we all know that that's not good. Like it's some of us, like there's some lessons that we have to learn on our own. Like we just have to go through the terrible thing, because we just refuse to learn the lesson otherwise. But in reality, life is much better if you can learn from someone else's experience and then avoid the hard thing that happened to them and just sidestep right around it because they said, hey, this is what I did, which led to this hard thing. And then you can be like, well, if I do this, then I probably won't have that hard experience. And so I can just shimmy right along, right past that. So the point that I want to make with this is this book, Meditations, right? Because there's a lot of people, especially nowadays, that point to and bring up a really good point of, yeah, but people have shared their wisdom in ways other than books, right? I'm literally doing a podcast right now, and there's a video online for it. I'm not writing a book about this, so it is possible to gain other people's wisdom through a medium other than reading. So why should I read, right? And the main thing that you have to remember with that is that way before video came around and way before podcasts came around, people were writing books. This book, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, was written in AD 161, right? That's a long flipping time ago. There was no YouTube then, right? Marcus Aurelius didn't make a podcast of all his stuff. He didn't put up a YouTube channel with all his stuff. And so the wealth of human knowledge that is contained in books, as opposed to what is contained in video format or in audio format, is just incomparable, right? So that's one of the things that you have to start at. And the other piece that you need to remember with this too is that audiobooks are okay. I want to make a whole dedicated video about this, but I use audiobooks all the time, and they're not as good in certain ways and for certain reasons as reading an actual physical book, right? But they are totally fine. So get Meditations and listen to it on an audiobook. If you have a hard time reading the physical book, what I would really recommend, and what I do all the time, is get the audiobook and the physical book, read the physical book while you're listening to the audiobook, right? That is one of the best life hacks you can ever get because your brain is getting the input in two different forms, which makes it stick better. And it's training you to read at a steady pace, even if you make the audiobook faster, right? That's one way to train yourself to read faster, is you're following along with the words going through your ears really fast. But overall, the thing that I want you to remember with this is that there's so much knowledge, all the wealth of human history with the knowledge that we have in books is just incomparable compared to what we have nowadays. And so the ability to go and get the best thoughts, that's the other piece that I want to harp on this, is that a book is someone's best thoughts. When I do this video, I'm trying to give you all my best thoughts, but I haven't scripted this thing out. I haven't really sat here and edited everything. I haven't had someone else go and edit my words and make sure that it's clear what I'm trying to say. And the thing about books is that they are someone's best thoughts pared down and cleaned up and put together in the best possible way that they could be, in the clearest sense and the most impactful way that they possibly could be. And there's something very, 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 very powerful about someone taking the time to refine their thoughts in that way. So reason number 2, you learn from someone else's experiences. Reason number 3, why every man has to forge himself into a reader, is because it increases your imagination. For that, I want to talk about this book, The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. There is a huge plot point of this book is these things called shard blades, and they're blades that are essentially attached to a spirit, and so they can just appear out of nowhere, right? And like the first time that I read through this book, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the cool, like I want a shard blade more than I want anything in the entire world. But on top of those, there's so much to this world and this whole Cosmere, really, that's a whole Brandon Sanderson thing, but there's so much to this world in Stormlight Archives that has just lit up my imagination. And the thing about reading stories like this is that when you increase your imagination, right, you can increase your understanding of the world in ways that you wouldn't have thought of otherwise, right? And the thing that I like to say is, like, imagination gives you a vision of who you can become, right? So when you read this cool story, when I read this story about Kaladin or about Dalinar in here, or you read Lord of the Rings and you read about Aragorn, and you imagine this character, what it can do is it can give you a vision of who you could be in certain situations. And so then when I come and I reach this hard point, or I have to have this difficult conversation, or I have to keep pushing past this thing when I don't want to push past it anymore, I can use my imagination, and I can literally put myself in the place of Kaladin, or I can put myself in the place of Dalinar, or I can put myself in the place of Rocky, or put myself in the place of Aragorn, and I can ask, what would I do if I was this person? If I was this kind of a guy? If I was the man that Aragorn is, would I quit right now? If I was the man that, I know Rocky's a movie, but same thing in this imagination at this point, right? Would I get back up and keep fighting, or would I just be like, okay, fine, like, I quit, whatevs. And so reading is a hugely powerful way to increase that imagination. And again, like I just referenced Rocky, this is totally something that can happen in movies as well, right? But the power of books is that because you don't have those visuals like you do in the movie, it forces you to use your imagination even more. And so it forces you to work out that imaginative muscle even more than watching the film does, right? So when I read Lord of the Rings and I have to imagine everything about Aragorn, I'm working even harder to create this whole picture in my mind of what this guy looks like and what his sword looks like and how all this stuff works and whatever. And then when I watch the movie, I don't have to do that, which, again, doesn't make it a bad thing, but you definitely use more of it when you're reading. So I always recommend read the book first, stretch your imagination muscles that way, and always be reading stories that stretch your imagination and force you to imagine these worlds and imagine these characters and imagine all these things, because that gives you such a vision of who you could be and who you could be like and who you could become, right? So third reason, it increases your imagination. Fourth reason is that it increases your creativity. And I want to talk about this book, Think Again by Adam Grant. I love this book. And the message of this book is really this whole idea of questioning your presuppositions and questioning the beliefs that you have, and seeking out information that's opposite of what you think and opposite of what you believe, in order to create a clearer picture and either change your beliefs and reframe your beliefs because you find out that they don't apply anymore, or become firmer in your beliefs and steadier in your understanding of why you believe those things and why you don't believe the opposite things, right? So there was a quote that a friend of mine told me that someone, one of her worship pastors, I think, told her, but he had said, creativity is connecting the dots. And the thing is that books give an infinite number of dots for you to connect. And so one of the things that I love is I love getting a book that preaches the exact opposite of another book. And then I'll read the one that says A, and then I'll read the one that says Z, and then try to connect the dots between them and try to create my own opinion from them, because I'm probably not going to land fully on the A side, and I'm probably not going to land fully on the Z side. That's the complete opposite. And so what I want to do is I want to take the best arguments of this side and the best arguments of this side and mold them together and figure out where it is that I land on this spectrum and what I agree with and what I don't agree with, and connect all of those dots in between these things. And the more you read, the more you find that, oh, this referenced this story referenced this story, or this book, this nonfiction book talks about this, that this guy talked about, and he learned this thing from this other guy, and then that led him to this discovery, and it creates all these connections of the dots among everything. And the more dots you can connect, the cooler pictures you can draw, right? If you think about, like a dot grid journal, right? You can draw an infinite number of designs in there. Like, why? Well, because the whole page is full of dots. You can connect dots in any which way you want. And so the more dots that you have that you can connect, the more creative you can be, the more designs you can come up with, the more ideas you can come up with, the more things that you can see that other people weren't able to see. And the more you can provide value to the people in your life. That's what I love doing. I love hearing from someone and them say, oh, I really liked this book. And then I love taking another book that seems like completely out of left field, but that I know because I have enough dots that I can connect. I know like, oh yeah, I know you like this. And I know this seems like not at all the same thing, but I promise you will love this too. Right. And one of my favorites of that is my uncle. I had shared with him the Orphan X series, which is this thriller series about a ex-government assassin dude. And he loved them. And I'm like, okay, dude, well, here's the deal. If you love these books, you're also going to love the Joe Pickett series, which is a book series about a game warden in Wyoming, and it's like, those are not connected at all, but I'm like, yeah, but they are, because if you like this for these reasons, you're going to love Joe Pickett for these reasons. And so the more dots you can connect, again, the cooler things you can draw, the cooler things you can create, the more value you can add to the world. And so that's the fourth reason why we have to become a reader, is because the more you read, the more dots you have, and the more dots you have, the more you can connect those dots using that creativity. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is that the final reason that you read is because it increases your ability to focus. And in the distracted world that is modern culture, focus is a secret weapon. Your ability to sit down and just focus on one thing for more than literally 47 seconds sets you above 50% of the rest of people just right off the bat. It's like showing up to work on time and with a smile. If you do that, you're better than 80% of people already. And it's like, if you can sit down and you can focus for 30 minutes of reading, you're better than 80% of people already, right off the bat. You're already in the top 20% just from your ability to do that. And what I want to talk about with this is this book, Democracy in America. This is a honking book, right? This book is 918 pages. And if you're watching the video of this podcast, like, you can see these are thick paragraphs and not very big text, right? So this is a book that has tons of really, really great ideas in it and really, really great concepts to dig into and work through in your own mind. But if you can't focus, you will not make it through this book, right? You can't come from TikTok culture and just hop over into reading Democracy in America and understand what the heck is going on, right? And so to give an example of this, I want to read a passage out of here, and it's pretty long. And I just want you to close your eyes, and I want you to listen, and I want you to see how much of this you can retain in this one block, right? Because it's a lot for me to even just read out loud, right? So this is one of the more famous passages from Democracy in America. And he says, above this race of men stands an immense and tutelary power, which takes upon itself alone to secure their gratification and to watch over their fate. That power is absolute, minute, regular, provident, and mild. It would be like the authority of a parent, if, like that authority, its object was to prepare men for manhood, but it seeks on the contrary to keep them in perpetual childhood. It is well content that the people should rejoice, provided they think of nothing but rejoicing. For their happiness such a government willingly labors, but it chooses to be the sole agent and the only arbiter of that happiness. It provides for their security, foresees and supplies their necessities, facilitates their pleasures, manages their principal concerns, directs their industry, regulates the descent of property, and subdivides their inheritances. What remains but to spare them all the care of thinking and all the trouble of living? Thus, it every day renders the exercise of the free agency of man less useful and less frequent. It circumscribes the will within a narrow range and gradually robs a man of all the uses of himself. It covers the surface of society with a network of small, complicated rules, minute and uniform, through which the most original minds and the most energetic characters cannot penetrate to rise above the crowd. The will of man is not shattered, but softened, bent and guided. Men are seldom forced by it to act, but they are constantly restrained from acting. Such a power does not destroy, but it prevents existence. It does not tyrannize, but it compresses, enervates, extinguishes, and stupefies a people till each nation is reduced to be nothing better than a flock of timid and industrious animals, of which the government is the shepherd. Okay, that's a hell of a passage. Like, I'm starting to lose track, and I'm the one reading this, and I've read this multiple times, right? But that passage is brilliant and incredibly insightful for understanding what you need to be aware of and what you need to be afraid of about government becoming, right? And if you look at it in the modern day, that passage is so prophetic, and it is so pinpoint accurate to what is happening in the modern culture and in the government in the US right now, right? So that passage can literally change your life, and people understanding that passage could change the entire country. But before you can understand it, you have to be able to focus for longer than freaking 14 seconds. Right? It took me whatever it was, a minute and a half to read 2 paragraphs, you know? And so the reason that we read and that we have to forge ourselves into a reader is because in order to understand these big ideas, and in order to make a difference in the world, and in order to do actual, real, hard work that matters, you have to be able to focus. You can't read this passage in an 8-second YouTube short. You can't read it in a freaking TikTok. You have to be able to focus, okay? So that's the final reason that I wanted to talk about. We read and we stack our reading, and we work to go up those levels of reading in order that we can focus better, so that we can think about big things properly, so that we can think about the real issues of life properly. We can dig into them. We can understand why they matter. We can understand what matters about them, and we can understand what we're supposed to do about them. So there you go. That's all I have for this one. The 5 reasons why every man needs to forge himself into a reader. It's the best scientifically proven way to develop critical analysis, reflection, and empathy. You learn from other people's experiences and not just your own, including people that only wrote books and never had a chance to make videos, right? It increases your imagination, it increases your creativity, and it increases your ability to focus. If you want to live a good life, if you want to be someone whose life matters in this world, those things are critical. They have to happen. And so it is your duty as a man to forge yourself into a reader. And that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here to help you do. I'm happy to find the books that encourage you to do that. I'm here to give you a kick in the pants to help you do that. And that's what I'm doing this whole time. That's my whole life, is constantly trying to forge myself into a better reader, into someone who better understands the value of this, the call to it, and the duty that I have to develop myself as a reader. So I hope you guys are having a great day. Make sure you're subscribed, leave a like on this, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree, you disagree. If you have other reasons why you also think that people need to forge themselves into readers, I would love to hear them. I'd love to have a discussion with you in the comments. And yeah, hope you're having a great day, and I'll talk to you in the next one.